Hi everyone. So in this part of the lecture, we are going to just briefly talk about what is AJAX. We are going to see how it is used hands-on in the next part of the lecture. Okay. So here we just understand what is AJAX. What does AJAX stands for? AJAX will go step by step. It's an acronym again. It stands for asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. So we are going to see how all these different parts play a role inside the definition of how to use AJAX. So let's start with the first part. What does asynchronous mean? To understand what asynchronous means, we must understand what synchronous means. In asynchronous, which is what we do currently in a browser, is we open the browser, we open up a page. And while we are on the page, if we click on something, what happens is the browser stops the request, whatever we are doing. We are blocked now. So it goes to the server again and processes the new request. And then it comes back with a response. And then you can start using the page again. And this is how it goes on. So in a synchronous request, whenever you click on something or you make an intermediate request in the middle, what happens is your page is blocked. You cannot do anything else. You have to stay there, whatever you are doing. And then it goes back to the server to do some job and come back again. Okay, so synchronous calls are blocking. That means the user who's requesting is blocked while the request is processed by the server. On the other hand, asynchronous means the user is continuously doing whatever action that he was doing. And while the user is doing the action, if in the middle they make a request, the request goes to the server processes the request. Now you see, you're not blocked, you're actually doing your work. You continue to do your work. And when the server finishes processing the request, it will come back to you and it will initiate what is known as a callback function. The callback tells what to do when the response has returned back to the browser or to the requester in this case. Now, this is possible, as you can see, the difference between the previous diagram and this diagram is that it is possible by the availability of this engine in the middle, which is the AJAX engine. Okay, this is what makes it non-blocking, because this is the part which handles the intermediate coming back of the response while you are still working on the page that is open to you. Okay, so the user can continue working while the request is being processed by the server. The callback function is initiated once the request has completed. So because of this nature of an asynchronous call, you can make more than one request at the same time because you're not blocked. You can start working. So whenever the response is back, you will see what is happening. So you don't have to wait for the response. You can make multiple requests and keep on doing whatever you're doing. The processing will happen at the server side at the backend. And when it comes back, it will initiate the callback function and you can have the response from the server based on whether the request was successful or not successful. This is the definition of asynchronous. The second letter on AJAX stands for JavaScript. That means that this is possible, AJAX is possible by using JavaScript because the language of the web that is handling the logic behind the page is JavaScript. In order to do that, JavaScript uses an object which is called as XHR. If you remember in the previous lecture, when I was trying to show you the difference between traditional page architectures and a single page architecture, we saw the requests that are made from the browser to the server by using XHR only. When we saw LinkedIn page, we saw that these requests have been are being sent and received by using XHR. So what is this XHR? XHR stands for XML HTTP request. Okay, these are used to exchange data asynchronously with the server. So while you're using the application in your browser, the AJAX engine behind the browser, makes a request to the server and receives the data on your behalf and then initiates the callback function. It is responsible for updating the parts of the page without reloading the page, as we saw in the LinkedIn example. It is the keystone of the AJAX technology. Now, since it is an object, it has some attributes, it has methods, and it has events that it can react to. Now, we will understand this a little better when we are looking at it in an example, in a hands-on work of how things can be done. But let me just give you a brief overview of what these are. Now, XHR object has some attributes which tells them about the status of the object itself. So whenever you make a request to the server, this status will have this some attributes that can tell us whether it is in which state. It can be, there are two major status messages which are of concern to us: the ready state and the status. The ready state tells us that in which state is my request. You remember that whenever you make a request, you see this loading icon. This loading icon means that your request is currently being processed. So there are different levels of where your request can be. It can be initiating, it can be sent, it is received, it is processing, or at the end, So the one that we are interested in is when the request is completed. For this course, we are only interested in when the ready state is that the request is completed, and that is 4. The number 4 is used to indicate that the request has been completed. The status, on the other hand, tells whether the request that we have received, that we have sent, and the response that we have received, was it successful or not. So it uses HTTP status codes. So if you're familiar, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's simple. It says that if you're using 200, that means it is successful. If it is 404, that means it was not found. Something like that. So HTTP uses status codes and some text to go around with it. So 404 means not found, 200 means okay, and these kind of things. So this status and status text will tell us whether the request that was returned was successful or not, whether whatever request we initiated was successfully completed or not. Okay, and the response text is what we receive in return. This is the request the response that the data that we have requested for, which could be the JSON file or the XML file that we are waiting for. The methods are used to initiate the request. For example, open is to create a new object, newly initialize an object. Send is to actually send the request to the server, and abort is in the middle. Let's say, for example, if you press the cancel button, so this is used for canceling the already sent request. There are some events as well that we are interested in, which is what this XHR object reacts to. So whenever we are waiting for a request change, we want to look at if there is a change in the status of the XHR object. So for this, we have an event handler. We assign an event handler for on ready state change. There are others as well, other events as well. On load, which is called when the XHR transaction completes successfully. On progress, which is called periodically when the XHR completes successfully. So for example, when you have a loading bar, you're uploading a file and you see this bar that goes from 0% to 100%. So this is at the background, an AJAX request continuously communicating with the server, asking how much percentage of the data was already uploaded. And this is the data that you see. This is the status bar that you see, and this can be received from the server using the on progress event change. But in this lecture, in this course, we are interested in only when the status changes, and this change will be when the request has been completed and it has been done successfully. Okay. The last part is X, which is XML. Now, XML was the popular data standard that was used before. Now, currently, the most popular one is JSON. That's the reason why we have started learning about JSON rather than using XML. It can also be HTML. The data that is sent between the server and the client through XHR can also be an HTML code, which can be used to display as is. Okay, so it could be JSON file, it could be an XML file, it could be an HTML part of the file, which is something pre-written, and then you can just attach this to the existing DOM tree that you have already on your screen displayed. Okay, so in the next part, we will see hands-on of how to use XHR object in JavaScript to make an AJAX request and receive a JSON file, and how to process that JSON file.